Welcome back. Now, there seems to be no end to the uncertainty faced by thousands of legal foreigners who are yet to receive their long-term waiver and visa applications outcome to work in South Africa. And this after the Department of Home Affairs extended the March deadline for expired permits to the 31st of December this year. Now, the department introduced the temporary measures to deal with the backlog that's experienced in processing the pending applications that were received before the 31st of March. Organizations such as Business Leadership South Africa have raised concern about the loss of investment confidence that will be created by the visa applications backlog and, of course, the upheaval created in people's lives. So for more on this issue, we joined virtually by Stefanie De Sude Darbandi, who is Director and Lawyer at De Sude Darbandi Immigration Attorneys. Stefanie, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you. Good morning.
So the Department of Home Affairs is, of course, attempting to deal with the backlogs with this waiver of visa applications by extending the deadline to the 31st of December this year. Your thoughts on that?
You know, Sakina, it's great to see that there's measures in place to deal with the backlog. A few weeks before the minister released the extension, a proposed plan to combat the backlog was also released. The problem is that is there a real interest in clearing this backlog? Is there a real care about the effects of the delays, not just on our economy and what it means to South Africa, but on the lives of these people that are waiting for outcomes? You know, the extension says for applications filed, waiver and visa applications filed before 31st of March. Some of these have been waiting for 2 years, pending for 2 years, some longer. And a few months ago, I've seen a number of articles published by both the minister, or articles in which both the minister and the deputy DDG acknowledged the backlog, acknowledged the extent of the backlog. And yet the minister waited for the very last hour to publish this extension when it could have been done a year ago for people to plan properly. I've had clients, families that are separated, a mother that had to leave, or mothers rather, that had to leave minor children behind with other families because they are awaiting the outcomes, etc. So it's great that it's been extended, but it doesn't help everybody and it doesn't clear the problem, unfortunately.
So with regard to the reasons that the department gave, for this backlog, obviously one could imagine COVID would be right up there and COVID regulations and the restrictions that came with that. But what are some of the other reasons?
Well, Home Affairs have always been an understaffed department. And I think, COVID's affected everybody. But the real slowdown started in about March 2021. And it's just gotten worse since then. I think it's a combination of both. During that time, from about that time until last year, the minister has been going through a process in terms of a clean-up process, which is necessary to suspend and fire officials that he believed was corrupt or allegations of corruptions, which again is necessary, but very little was done to replace these people. And during this time, we saw a decline in the outcomes that were ready for collections. Usually we would need to collect outcomes almost every single day. We'd manage it on a specific day, but there'd be a number of outcomes. There'd be months where there'd be no outcomes whatsoever. So it's difficult to say. I've seen a number of articles where people are asking, is it just Home Affairs' inability or inefficiency, or is it deliberate? I think it's a little bit of both. And I say this simply because we sit there in that office every day, all day, trying to extract outcomes. You contact Home Affairs officials. There's very little care. You explain that people need to leave, people from visa-exempt countries, for example, where this extension doesn't allow them to come back into the country because they have to apply for a visa and their issues abroad and they have South African families. And the reply is really, we don't care. You just have to wait. Many people are in this position. That's the attitude. And that is the problem. The problem is not so much the delay. People have been accommodating. People have been understanding. It's more the fact that there isn't this real care when an issue is raised for assistance. When you do approach them and say, look, this is an urgent matter. Can you deal with this? And they just don't.
So when you say, it is somewhat deliberate, what would the South African government and the Department of Home Affairs stand to gain by deliberately, not attending to people's queries?
Well, if I use our court cases as an example, from about January last year, we've launched about 50 High Court matters, most of which dealt with permanent residence applications and setting aside wrongful negative decisions. But the case is dragged out for as long as it can be. You know, all the tactics are used during this stage where they don't oppose, they don't appear or file any papers before the date on an unopposed roll, and then suddenly appear and they'll ask for a month or two to give us an outcome. And we agree to this. And a month or two will go by and nothing happens. And we send emails about going back to court with contempt. And then suddenly they'll come back and they say, well, we oppose. And then that process starts. And it gets dragged out until the final date or the final hearing when suddenly we get the answer, when this could have been given at the outset. So why do they do that? One gets the feeling that it's as if maybe they hope or think that people would give up, that people would leave. A lot of Home Affairs officials, unfortunately, do still believe and that foreigners are here to take work away from them rather than just, to assist and benefit the country. And again, I say this all the time, when we're dealing with the Immigration Act, we're dealing with people who either have a relationship with the South African or a link to South Africa in the sense that they've been working here lawfully for X amount of years, or they have money, or they want to invest in a business or operate a business and therefore creating jobs. We're not dealing with people that are trying to, that are a burden to the state or take anything away from South Africans. If anything, it's got a benefit to the South African country and South African people.
So, Stefanie, this new deadline, as I understand, excludes applications that were received after the 31st of March this year. So, what sort of impact is this likely to have on those foreigners who are in the country legally, and of course this deadline and the impact for their continued stay or otherwise in South Africa?
So, Sakina, a lot of these people with pending outcomes are not legal in the country. So they have no status. By law, they have no status. Their visa expired and they are illegal foreigners. And what Home Affairs have done is that they've said, we're giving you this blanket waiver, which implies that your visa, which expired, is basically valid. So it will allow you to continue living here, it will allow you to leave the country, and it will allow you to do whatever your last visa allowed you to do. But that doesn't help people, for example, students that need to leave from matric to universities. They can't take up the new studies. People that are changing jobs, it doesn't allow them to do that. So these people are still in limbo. These people are at the risk of losing those jobs. If it doesn't assist, I don't understand why it doesn't assist any application that is pending, because Home Affairs have on record admitted that the processing time for visas is 2 to 3 months. The processing time for permanent residence is 8 months. And yet we have over 70,000 visa applications pending for longer than 3 months, and over 40,000 or close to 50,000 pending for longer than 8 months. So they should have something in place to address and assist everyone that is in waiting. But for those that aren't covered by the exemption, if their visa or permit application is not processed in time, so within this 2 to 3 month or 8 month period, they have a right to litigate. It's expensive, and one shouldn't have to go to court to get Home Affairs to do their job, but that's the only remedy and avenue that's available to them. And it's unfortunate because we shouldn't have to go to court for this.
So, and this application, of course, excludes short-term visitors to South Africa. Just explain that for us, and once again, the impact of that.
So it not only excludes short-term visitors. If you look at the wording, it says all long-term visa holders, so it excludes those people with ZEPs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but there's the big case that's being heard next year about all those. So it excludes ZEP holders. So it means, what happens to them? These people are applying for their waivers and their visas, and they assume that they'd be protected by this exemption, and now suddenly they're excluded. It also excludes, and this may be an error, but the minister is yet to fix it, it excludes children on accompanying visitor visas. It excludes retired person visa holders. It excludes people that are on long-term visitor visas to be here as volunteers or in the film industry, or as journalists, etc. It excludes them. Again, that may be an error, but it hasn't been fixed. So for the short-term visitors, these are the people. I mean, there's been a growth in the number of people since COVID that have been traveling to South Africa for holiday purposes, which is a good thing. But these people cannot file extensions, because if they apply for renewal, every entry visa can be renewed at least once. If they apply for a renewal, they will not get it, because the processing time is way longer than 90 days. So they have to leave, which means we lose out on people being here for a longer period, spending their money for a longer period. And those that have applied, for example, in January or in last year, that are still waiting for the outcomes, that are here because they don't want to leave without a valid visa, are now being told you have until the end of this month to leave. And really, it's through no fault of theirs. Those should be prioritized. Approving a 90-day renewal or a 30-day renewal should be a very quick process. There's very little documents that's submitted for those applications.
So just finally, Stefanie, what's the solution? What do you think the Department of Home Affairs should do in order to resolve this?
Well, the minister announced that, or rather in this plan, we were notified that at least 61 new employees started on the 1st of April. That's great, but we don't know the sort of training that these people have. We don't know if this means that there's going to be an even bigger number of rejections that are going to be processed. But I think the attitude needs to change. There's nothing wrong with the law. The minister and his team are always publishing articles about how foreigners are trying to pull the wool over their eyes and they don't trust foreigners, and if the system's being abused. If there's any abuse, it happens inside. If there's any corruption, it's happening inside. Deal with those people, but not at the foreigners rather, and South Africans shouldn't have to pay the price for it. There should be measures in place that doesn't affect the processing, the tiniest processing of applications, because people file their visa applications 60 days before the expiry, and then Home Affairs is given another 3 months. So they have a total of 5 months to process one application. It should be enough time. There's got to be a change in attitude. They have to understand that these are public servants, public administrators. Their duties are outlined in the Constitution. They're not doing us favors. They're not doing foreigners favors. The immigration control at the airport, they have to treat people with respect. They have to be more welcoming. We understand that they are overwhelmed, but they have to also come to the party and understand their role in all of this. And that is an attitude change.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for helping us understand these issues. That was Stefanie De Sude Darbandi, a director and lawyer at Sude Darbandi Immigration Attorneys, talking to us about the long-term waiver visa application backlog faced by the Department of Home Affairs, and of course the impact of this on foreigners who are legally trying to work and be in the country.